Tariffs are going to destroy our economy. Or they're not going to change anything but raise more money for the government. Or something in between. For thousands of years, these taxes on imported goods have been consistently used as instruments of economic policy. From ancient Mesopotamia, starting this whole mess, to the 21st century, tariffs have served as sweet revenue-generating tools, complex instruments of national protection, and a means of retaliation against perceived, very bad, no fair trade practices. They started as a way for rulers to generate essential income for the state, control the flow of critical goods, and fund their extensive administrations. The Roman Empire, for example, used a sophisticated system of customs duties called the Portoria, not to be confused with Portlandia, the comedy series about Portland, Oregon. Just put a bird on it. As we moved into the Mercantilist Era, tariffs evolved into a central component of a broader national strategy. Fast forward to the 19th century, and tariffs became a key tool for countries like the United States. They were championed by figures like Alexander Hamilton of modern-day Broadway fame. Proponents argued that tariffs would promote a harmony of interests, but these policies also led to a lot of drama, like the disaster that was the McKinley Tariff of 1890. McKinley! The biggest drama of all was in the 20th century with the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. Enacted at the beginning of the Great Depression and is widely considered to have worsened and prolonged the Great Depression, which was depressing. So what happens when they make a comeback in a modern trade dispute? Before we get into all that, let me tell you about our sponsor. Email is completely useless now, between companies just sending ads disguised as a newsletter and scammers somehow getting around spam filters. Email is dead. If it wasn't for the few friends we have that only use email and every website requiring you to sign up with your email before you can do anything on the site, I wouldn't even have an email address anymore. Luckily, my friend created a new email service that just might fix all of these issues. That email service is port87.com. This is a game changer you've been waiting for. Port87 lets you create a unique email address for anything. Seriously, signing up for that new online store? Generate a quick unique address. Downloading an ebook? Another unique address. Here's the best part. All of those emails get automatically sorted and organized. Port87's unique addresses allow you to organize everything. You can make sure every email goes to your main inbox, known as the ag box, or delete the address and force every email into a black hole. Port87 has completely changed how I manage my online life. It's simple, it's secure, and it gives me back control of my inbox. If you're ready to finally end the email chaos, you have to try it. Click the link in the description or go to port87.com/powerofmoney to get started and take back control of your inbox. Trust me, your future self will thank you. Tariffs have been a thing for thousands of years, but where did they even begin? Well, the first recorded instances of these trade taxes go all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia, somewhere between 3000 and 2000 BCE. Never gonna give up that E at the end of BCE. Metatron! Rulers in Sumerian city-states imposed duties on goods coming into their territories. Early evidence also shows that tariffs were levied on the trade of metal and textiles between the ancient city of Kanesh and Assyria. These early tariffs were an essential source of income for the state. For example, ancient Egypt used tolls and taxes on goods transported along the Nile River to help maintain vital infrastructure and fund the pharaoh's administrations. The original pyramid scheme? No, we already used that joke in the last video. Tariffs were also a way for rulers to manage and control the flow of critical goods like grain, textiles, and precious metals, which helped them ensure the supply of essential resources for their people. Later, classical civilizations like the Roman Empire got a little crazy with their tariff systems. The Romans established the Portoria, a system of customs duties levied on both imports and exports throughout their vast trade networks. Taxes are going to get you both coming and going. This system was highly organized, with collections at border points and ports, and it played a significant role in funding the empire's expansive infrastructure and military conquests. During the Middle Ages, European kingdoms continued this practice, using tariffs primarily to protect local artisans from foreign competition and to raise funds for war efforts and general governance. By protecting local artisans, these European kingdoms were the first to use tariffs to protect local industry, something we still do today. Or claim to do today. Unless the World Trade Organization is looking, then it's all, they're dumping on us. We had to do it for revenue. Look, squirrel! The fact that tariffs were used consistently across ancient civilizations from Mesopotamia to Rome to medieval Europe shows they aren't just a modern economic tool, but a fundamental and enduring instrument of state power and economic control. It is a clear sign that the desire for states to control trade and extract resources from it is a deeply embedded aspect of governance that has persisted for thousands of years. With the foundation laid by ancient civilizations, tariffs were ready to become a central part of a new, ruthless economic philosophy. From the 16th to the 18th centuries, Europe was dominated by mercantilism, not a movement for a list of rules for what mermaids can't do or they will become ill. This ideology was all about national wealth, which was measured by one thing: how much gold and silver you had. Okay, well that was two things. Mercantilists believed that international trade was a zero-sum game where for one country to win and accumulate precious metals, another had to lose them. The main goal was to achieve a favorable balance of trade, which meant exporting more goods than you imported. To make this happen, countries imposed heavy tariffs on foreign goods. This was done to protect and foster domestic industries and promote employment within their own borders. Of course, other countries would just impose retaliatory tariffs, thus defeating the favorable balance of trade, or just end the trade between the two countries altogether. Luckily, nobody would try to do that now, right? But mercantilism was about more than just economics. It was a comprehensive national strategy. Tariffs helped fund professional armies and navies, which were essential for protecting commercial interests, securing colonial territories, and defending against rival states. This economic nationalism also played a crucial role in centralizing power away from feudal systems and toward powerful nation-states. For instance, governments provided protectionist measures like financial incentives to shipbuilders and forbidding foreign ships from engaging in trade along national coasts because shipping was a cornerstone of the era. Shipping as in boats, not shipping as in fanfic, which we are not going to get into here. I do not need a bunch of Harry Potter shippers coming after me. So, in the Mercantilist era, tariffs were not just about money, they were about a boatload of money. They were deeply embedded in the political, military, and colonial objectives of the time. They were about securing national resources, funding armies, expanding empires, and asserting dominance in a fiercely competitive international environment. It was a clear example of how a nation's economic policies could be used as strategic tools to shape alliances and the global distribution of power. As the world entered the transformative Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, protectionist policies saw a significant resurgence, particularly in the United States and various European nations. The U.S. experience, in particular, was shaped by a strong belief in infant industry protection. That's not a belief in keeping babies employed or a belief in protecting industries providing goods for babies, but the protection of new industries. The intellectual groundwork for American protectionism was laid by Alexander Hamilton's 1791 Report on Manufactures, which I don't think made it into the play. This was further developed by economist Henry Carey, who argued that tariffs were essential for accelerating domestic manufacturing and shielding American workers from the socially deleterious consequences of industrialization already seen in Europe. Proponents also framed tariffs as a defense against the perceived British conspiracy to dump cheap goods in American ports, which they argued was an economic war of extermination against nascent U.S. industries. The 19th century in the U.S. was marked by decades of high trade restrictions, with several key tariff acts. The Tariff of 1828, known as the Tariff of Abominations, not a tariff on imports from Cthulhu. The tariff imposed high duties to protect northern industries, but it also deepened regional divisions between the industrial North and the agrarian South. The Morrill Tariff, 1861, which Henry Carey helped write, raised average tariff rates to around 47% on dutiable commodities to generate revenue for the Civil War effort. I'm not sure why it's not called the Carey Tariff or what's so moral about it. The McKinley Tariff, 1890, pushed tariff rates close to 50%. McKinley! The Dingley Tariff, 1897 to 1899, further raised duties to over 50% on more than 1,000 imported goods, solidifying America's position as one of the world's most protective markets. Dingley? Can we say that on YouTube? However, the promises of these tariffs often went unfulfilled. Working conditions for the industrial class often declined, and the tariffs increasingly became vehicles of special interests, benefiting monopolistic robber barons at the expense of workers. Sort of like when the CEO of a major American company gives the president a golden plaque in order to get a favorable tariff on goods his company will need to import. This led to a critical divergence between the stated goals of protectionism and its actual regressive socioeconomic consequences. The correlation between high tariffs and rapid U.S. economic growth in the late 19th century has been a source of debate, referred to as the tariff growth paradox. While some suggested a casual link, economic analysis presents a more nuanced picture. Economists argue that the rapid growth was likely driven by other factors, such as a growing population, immigration, substantial capital accumulation, and magic pixie dust, rather than tariffs. Tariffs, in fact, may have even hindered growth by raising the price of imported capital goods. Lowercase goods were unaffected. A similar return to protectionism was seen in Europe during the late 19th century. In Germany, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck pushed for a protectionist law in 1879 that imposed tariffs on both industrial and agricultural imports, so everything. This shift from Germany's previous free trading stance was driven by economic pressures like declining grain prices and increased competition, especially from U.S. wheat. Bismarck's motivations were multifaceted, including raising revenue to reduce direct taxation, protecting domestic industries and agriculture, and securing political support. Similarly, France introduced the Malines Tariff in 1892, which was primarily aimed at protecting its agricultural sector from intensifying international competition. These tariffs were obviously retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., with the French tariff notably after the McKinley Tariff. McKinley! This widespread European shift back to protectionism was a defensive response to shared global economic crisis and competitive pressures, such as a slowdown in world economic growth and a significant fall in world prices. This demonstrates a common pattern. Periods of global economic stress often foster a resurgence of protectionist sentiment and policies across multiple nations. The 20th century saw a dramatic shift in global trade policy, swinging from unprecedented protectionism to a concerted movement towards liberalization. The most infamous example of this period is the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. Enacted at the start of the Great Depression, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act established elevated tariffs on more than 20,000 imported products. Its primary goal was to protect American industries and agriculture from foreign competition, but it had the exact opposite effect. It triggered widespread retaliatory tariffs from major trading partners like Canada, the United Kingdom, and Germany. I guess that's not the opposite effect, but an unintended consequence. It totally protected American industries from foreign customers. This rapid escalation resulted in a devastating global trade war, causing the world trade to plummet by an estimated 60% by 1933. The collapse of global trade is widely considered to have significantly worsened and prolonged the Great Depression, making Smoot-Hawley the definitive historical case study of a monumental policy failure. The catastrophic consequences of Smoot-Hawley led to a fundamental re-evaluation of tariff strategies. This shift began with President Franklin Roosevelt's Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act of 1934, which empowered the president to negotiate bilateral tariff reductions. Allowing the president to negotiate tariffs never caused any problems. This eventually led to the establishment of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, in 1947. GATT's primary goal was to promote free trade and systematically reduce tariffs among its member countries, aiming to prevent a repeat of the interwar trade collapse. An important precursor to this was the Underwood Tariff Act of 1913, which significantly reduced basic tariff rates and crucially introduced a permanent federal income tax. This gave the government a new, more stable source of revenue, meaning trade policy no longer had to serve primarily as a way to fill government coffers. This fiscal flexibility allowed policymakers to consider trade liberalization more seriously as an economic objective aimed at fostering efficiency and competitiveness. Yay, the income tax saves American industry! I bet you won't hear that on any other YouTube channel. Despite the general trend towards liberalization, tariffs have continued to resurface as policy tools, often triggering international trade disputes. 1980s trade wars with Japan, the U.S. implemented tariffs and other restrictions in response to the rise of Japanese automobiles and electronics exports, leading to tensions and disrupted supply chains. 2002 steel tariffs. President George W. Bush's administration enacted tariffs on steel imports to safeguard local manufacturers, which provoked retaliatory tariffs from key trading partners like the European Union, China, and Brazil. Thus, the only outcome was a rise in the price of steel and steel goods in the U.S., just like all Republican presidents want. 2018 to 2019, China-U.S. trade war. This major dispute began with U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum and quickly escalated to impact hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods. China retaliated with its own tariffs, which contributed to a slowdown in the global economy, thus making prices rise in the U.S. and hurt the U.S. economy. Who was president at this time? These modern conflicts highlight the intricate and often volatile relationship between protectionism and globalization. While tariffs can offer short-term benefits to specific domestic sectors, they often invite retaliatory actions that can severely disrupt international trade and global markets, which nobody could predict except that it happens every time tariffs are raised for all of the history of human civilization. While we've seen how tariffs have been used throughout history, the debate over their effectiveness continues to be a central part of economics. This debate broadly pits arguments for protectionism against the principles of free trade in a steel cage, except the tariffs on steel are too high. Proponents of tariffs typically advance several key arguments. Infant industry protection, again, not about babies. This classic argument suggests that newly emerging domestic industries need temporary protection from more established foreign firms to grow and achieve economies of scale. National security. Governments may use tariffs on goods deemed critical for national security, such as medical supplies or defense-related components, to ensure domestic availability and reduce reliance on foreign sources. The vulnerabilities exposed during the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted this rationale, as many nations restricted exports of essential medical goods. Anti-dumping and fair trade. Anti-dumping is not about poop, but about selling goods below their market price. Tariffs can be used to counteract unfair competition from foreign companies that dump goods, often because of government subsidies in their home country. The US and the European Union, for instance, have implemented anti-dumping tariffs on Chinese steel and solar panels. You know, solar panels, those things that produce carbon-free and money-free electricity once you have them installed, and China is paying for them. Oh no! Revenue generation. As seen throughout history, tariffs are a direct source of government revenue, particularly in periods before the widespread adoption of income taxes. Conversely, advocates of free trade present compelling arguments against tariffs, often drawing from foundational economic theories. Adam Smith and specialization. Adam Smith, in his work Wealth of Nations, argued that specialization, where nations focus on producing what they do best, is a primary driver of wealth creation. He contended that tariffs diminish a nation's overall produce and make it poorer by diverting resources from goods of higher value to those artificially propped up by protectionism. Retaliatory tariffs. Smith also warned that retaliatory tariffs tend to spiral, harming all parties involved as trade barriers multiply and global commerce contracts. This can be viewed as a prisoner's dilemma. Not that the countries are in prison or that Mr. Beast has come up with a new devilish prison-related video, but that a single country might gain by imposing tariffs, but if the other countries retaliate, the outcome typically worsens for everyone. Cost to consumers. Economic analysis consistently demonstrates that the costs of tariffs are largely passed on to domestic consumers, particularly lower-income households, through higher prices, and everyone loves higher prices, especially those who can't afford those prices. Ultimately, none of this really matters if you are the one paying higher prices because of the tariffs. Sure, it's great if you own a company making a widget in the US, when the US puts a tariff on that exact type of widget. Yay, you get to charge more and have less competition. But tariffs are almost always never only on one thing, which means you may make more selling your widget, but pay more for everything else. And if you need something to make your widget that you can only get from outside the country, the extra money you make from selling your widget may just go to paying the tariff on the materials you need to make it. The history of tariffs is a testament to their enduring yet often paradoxical role in shaping national economies and international relations. From their ancient origins as rudimentary tools for revenue generation and trade control, tariffs evolved into a central instrument of mercantilist state building, aimed at accumulating national wealth and projecting geopolitical power. The Industrial Revolution saw their widespread adoption, particularly in the US, under the banner of infant industry protection and promises of worker welfare. However, this period also revealed a significant divergence between protectionist rhetoric and socio-economic reality, as tariffs often became instruments of special interests, leading to concentrated wealth and unfulfilled social pledges. Not that we have any problems with concentrated wealth and unfulfilled social pledges today. The 20th century provided a stark cautionary tale with the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Its catastrophic global consequences, including a dramatic collapse in world trade and the exacerbation of the Great Depression, solidified its place as the example of protectionists gone wrong. This pivotal event spurred a fundamental reevaluation of trade policy, leading to a sustained global movement towards liberalization, exemplified by the establishment of frameworks like GATT. The shift was also facilitated by changes in domestic fiscal policy, such as the introduction of income tax, which reduced governments' reliance on tariffs as primary revenue sources. This liberation allowed trade policy to be viewed more through an economic efficiency lens. With the creation of the income tax, we never needed tariffs again, and the whole world rejoiced. But wait! Despite this general trend towards liberalization, tariffs have continued to resurface in modern trade disputes, underscoring the persistent tension between national protectionist impulses and the realities of an increasingly interconnected global economy. While arguments for targeted tariffs for national security, anti-dumping measures, or temporary infant industry support continue to exist, the overwhelming consensus among economists leans against broad-based protectionism. The historical record consistently demonstrates that tariffs often impose significant costs on domestic consumers, invite retaliatory measures, and can lead to a net reduction in global trade and overall economic welfare. In conclusion, the history of tariffs is a cyclical narrative of nations grappling with the balance between domestic protection and international integration. While tariffs are powerful tools of statecraft, their implementation carries inherent risks of unintended consequences, trade wars, and a reduction in global prosperity. Understanding this complex legacy is crucial for navigating the intricate dynamics of contemporary global trade. Thanks for watching our video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you like this video, you should check out this other video we made on debt.